Today, we are going to interview Kimberly Conetta, who is currently running for a Board of Education seat in East Brunswick. Today, we're going to ask her questions, talk about her motivations for running for the Board of Ed, and some of the changes she thinks are necessary in East Brunswick. Anything she says today is of her own opinion and of her own volition. I am not endorsing any candidates during these interviews. This is just a way to have an authentic discussion with the people who are trying to make positive changes within our community, which I feel is really necessary for the growth of the overall community. So, Kimberly, thank you very much for taking the time today to be here.
Thank you for inviting me to do this and to hear me out and hear what I have to say and who I am and my background.
Awesome. So I know Kimberly from the East Brunswick Arts Coalition, right? And you're the president.
I am currently the president of the East Brunswick Arts Coalition. I was part of the original team when the mayor built this particular nonprofit. And then during the pandemic in 2019, 2020, I took over as president. So we've been doing a lot of good work, I think, in terms of promoting art and culture through different things that we do in town.
Awesome. What are some of your favorite stuff that you guys have done so far?
So one of our biggest thing is during the pandemic, we tried to get art out there, people to get active again. And one of the big things that we did was get these huge ceramic butterflies to do an outdoor butterfly exhibit. So rather than being in museums or inside for an exhibit, we decided to just display it all over East Brunswick. So we involved community artists to come and decorate these humongous butterflies, painting them, and then East Brunswick Recreation helped us to install it in the public facilities like the park and the art center and the library. So within different parts of East Brunswick, you'll see these wonderful, beautiful butterflies that are just brighten up the area.
Yeah. Why is that your favorite project?
Because one, it was my first project that was executed really nicely, and it was well received by the community. But then also it involved the community artists, and this was the first time I felt that we connected with the community, because I was driving around 15 humongous butterflies, transporting them to the artist. And then after it was done, and then I bring it back to the township, and then we had to figure out what to do. So I was constantly butterflies in my trunk. But yeah, I think we really connected with the local artists in town, but then a bigger reward of that is now it's up, and I'm constantly getting praises for these beautiful pieces of artwork that's in our town, like with Butterfly Park and with the art center. People are taking pictures in front of it, and when I see it on Instagram, I'm like, oh my gosh,
it's really cool.
It's being looked at, and people enjoy taking a look at those things.
So now you're doing a little bit of a shift.
I am.
Right? So from East Brunswick Arts Coalition and running that, my biggest question, why do you want to run for Board of Ed for a position that is not paid and has a lot of public scrutiny? So why?
So Coalition kind of gave me a little dabble in terms of community outreach and working with different people, different leaders, community leaders. And I was doing a lot of advocacy work just because I like to stay involved in a lot of different things. And people would come to me and ask me questions about, problems that they're having at school or things that they need to work with, with the township or something, and I'd point them to the different people that I know that could help them. And I was, when we started having the budget issue, the budget crisis 2 years ago when it came out, I was just like, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time for me to see what I can do from the other side of things rather than from the advocacy side, because it is important to me. I am a 1994 alumni of East Brunswick High School. I grew up here. I was here when the high school became Blue Ribbon it was a big deal.
Yeah,
right?
that is a big deal.
You know, I felt like that was the height of our academics, our sport, our arts. Like that was the time when we were like really shining. And with the budget cuts, I want to make sure that we keep to that standard, or we work to bring ourselves back to that standard, even though we have to cut.
Yeah.
Right. And it's for the students. I mean, I have a broad experience with the school system. I have a 26-year-old who went through the system. She was part of sports. She was part of the varsity tennis team. She did orchestra. My second child, he's in Churchill right now. He's into band. He does the jazz band. He does the marching band.
We're a very good band.
Yeah, we do. And then I have a special needs child. So I feel like I have a very wide range of experiences that I can help the Board of Ed to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our kids.
Awesome. So if you become a leader in town and people decide to vote for you and you end up on the board, what is your philosophy of leadership? How do you as a leader govern? How do you run? What is your philosophy of leadership? What is a leader?
I think a leader is a person who can see an issue or see something that needs to be improved and find the right people to help them to resolve or find solutions to things.
So
right?
bottom up.
Bottom up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you think that works? Why is that your philosophy?
Because then it's not just me thinking, doing my own research and possibly missing something that somebody else who is experienced would know. I mean, like I said, I have a broad range of experiences within the school system, but then, that's from a parent standpoint, that's from an advocacy standpoint, bringing in teachers, who specialize in certain things, or bringing in community leaders to discuss how to make things better, working together. I think that brings in a more positive outlook in things, because then when it comes time to presenting it to the public, it's not like the community is being told this is what it is, but they were actually part of the process.
Yeah, and if we look at the 2025 budget, right? You even said the last 2 years budget has been heavily scrutinized, right? People are showing up to board meetings more than they ever have in the last couple of years. So this communication thing, what does that look like for you? Because so the board runs, they're an entity, they make the choices, people voted for them, we're a representative government. So you actually don't have to listen to what they say.
Right.
So what does communication look like in 2025 when we have this big push for because of the internet, because everything's open.
Right.
Now there's a big push. What does that look like for you when you're leading the community, when you don't technically have to listen?
You technically don't have to listen, but we're kind of all in this together, I feel like, right? It can't just be our decisions. We're doing this for our community. We're doing this for our kids. In order for our kids to thrive in our school system, our teachers are first defense here. They're the ones who communicate and who are with them day to day. They have to be happy doing what they do, so yes, we don't have to communicate to them, but everybody's better off if we do. Everybody's better off if we work together. And so I feel like, I think with the shift, it's starting to shift a bit. I feel like, there's more communications that's come out. There's more, the last time with the whole budget, they tried to let the community know a little sooner than they did the previous year. They opened up a piece of their process to the public that they said they normally do behind closed doors. And so I think we're getting there. I'd like to see more of that in terms of, showing the public how things are done. Obviously.
Why do you think that's helpful? Why is it good? Actually, why do you? So that's something you think is important. Why is that important in your opinion for a board to have?
There could be somebody out there. There could be a parent out there who has great ideas, that could help us in our decision making. Obviously we're going to have to look at the budget and see where our shortfalls are, or where we need to cut, or the state of it all. And if there are people out there that see something that we don't see, they have to know what the process is. They need to know what we're discussing.
Yeah, because they may not understand. Well, why don't you do this?
Right.
Well,
and we
would love to, but we can't.
Yeah. It'll cut all those like rumors that come out.
Yeah.
So trying to, obviously there's a policy, where there are certain things that we can't share, but I would want to share as much as possible so that everybody's on the same page and everybody feels like they're working together for our kids.
So you talked about rigor, and I was a teacher for a long time. This topic of rigor is actually a really important issue to me. How do you contend with rigor versus the budget? And are these two ideas in contention with each other? Can rigor exist while still having a manageable budget, like, you know what I'm saying, and having services and program? What does that look like to you? Which is more important to you? How do you look at like funding for a school?
Funding for a school is very important.
Yes.
When it comes to cutting or looking to see where we can shave off a bit. I think, like I said before, we need to really we have to take a step up in terms of seeing it as a whole, right? Like last year they mentioned, possibly cutting orchestra. How can you cut orchestra at fourth grade, and start it at sixth? And, me having a musical background, I'm just like, no, you can't do that, because, sixth grade is where all of a sudden all these competitions come into play. And, so it's hard. I do think there is some contention between rigor and funding. And it's like I said, working together with people who know to try to figure out that balance of, okay, where can we shave off a little bit but keep our standards of academic, sports, and arts like going, at a high standard.
Would you say that's like your number one thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's like I said, that's like the one thing that I'm why I want to work with the Board of Ed, right? Okay. I want to make sure that our kids are being taken care of. I want to make sure that they're getting the best they can get, the tools that they need for their future, right? And with budget cuts, I don't want the academics, sports, and arts to also
decline. Why'd you move here?
Why did I move here? So,
you grew up here, so you came back. Why?
Because my parents are here.
Yeah.
Because I have great memories here, and I've always held East Brunswick school systems in high regard because of my experience.
We moved here because of...
Yeah, and I want my kids to have the same experiences. With my daughter, she was into tennis, and I was like, oh, we have a great girls tennis team, and then she was also part of orchestra, and I showed her all my medals from when I was, doing regionals and all state and stuff like that. I'm like, you can do that too, we have great support here. So I was familiar with how the school systems were and the programs that they had, and I had really good memories here, and I felt like it's something that my kids should experience as well. So that's why we stayed here and we didn't go anywhere else. I've always held East Brunswick schools in high regard.
I agree. I grew up in Edison, so like I watched East Brunswick. I knew about East Brunswick. I knew they were blue ribbon. They're exceptional, actually, in their educational practice. That's also why we moved here. So facilities are an ongoing issue, not just in East Brunswick. As a teacher, I used to be on the health and safety committee. Literally, we would go to these conventions, and every school district was just like, the place is leaking and basically disintegrating. How do you contend with, East Brunswick is dealing somewhat with the same things with their buildings. what are your stance on these things? Do we build new? Do we need to do better maintenance? Like what is your stance on how we manage our facilities?
Honestly, I have to look into that a little bit more, but from a general standpoint, I do feel like we've been putting bandages on our facilities, trying to delay the idea of new construction or fixing what needs to be fixed. We're like, okay, let's just try to fix this current issue so that we can hold on to it a little bit longer. I personally think, and I think this with everything, we need to have a project plan. We need to have an action plan. 3 to 5 years or whatever it is, but the community really needs something with a goal to kind of follow and be traceable and to be like, oh, what is our progress towards fixing this? Right. So I do think that some of our schools do need to be fixed. And I think also, the Board of Ed also needs to, kind of be real about things, and we have to be honest about where our schools are. If we're not honest with ourselves, there's no way of moving forward or fixing issues and stuff. And one of them is with building and maintenance.
Yeah. Policy and culture. The board deals with policy. That is their actual job.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think their role is in the culture of a school? There's been a lot of talk, just from the citizens that I know of, like talking around town, about culture and the climate. What does culture mean to you in the board, and what is their role in the culture of a school district? And we're going to be choosing a new superintendent soon.
Yeah.
So does he play a role, or she? Sorry. Does he or she, the future superintendent, play a role in the culture? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think culture is very important. I mean, for myself in my own personal career, like I'm always looking to be in a place that has great culture, right? Because where there's great culture, or positivity, things thrive there. Like people thrive in a positive culture. So yes, I know, like you said, the Board of Ed is about policy, but I think culture is a huge part of it. And in the past 2 years, I feel like it kind of shifted a little bit where we lost, the community lost trust in the Board of Ed, and we just need to better the relationships with the community, with the township, with the teachers.
What do you think the focal point is to do that, to change that culture? So what do you think is the focal to change this culture that is occurring?
Reaching out to them to work together. I think that's again the key thing is communication and being open and working together to make things better for our students.
Is there one particular mission you have in mind when you enter the board? You can't do everything.
Yeah. Things are not going to fix itself in overnight kind of thing. Yeah.
So for you walk in, what is your mission objective as coming onto the board? What's really important to you?
So it is the communication piece of it. It's the relationship with all these different pieces, with the teachers, with our students, with the community and our township. That's my biggest mission, because with that you can create these action plans on a go forward where we can see some sort of light, at the end of the tunnel, to get to a goal that we've set for ourselves, right? But we can't really have an action plan and our goals without everybody being on board, I feel, and supporting it. It can't just be the schools. It has to be aligned with what the community wants, with the teachers and the township. So yeah.
And that's a lot. That's a lot of.
It is a lot.
You got contracts from teachers at play.
Yeah.
We have contracts from administrators. There's a lot to juggle. I come from the teacher aspect, and I know a couple board members already who are on staff. I do not envy this position sometimes, as people are getting screamed at in the middle of a meeting on a Thursday.
Yeah.
So let's leave off with, what is a promise you have for voters? What is something that you want your lasting message to them as you go out and you do your little campaign trail and all that?
Yeah, my lasting message is that I want the biggest thing that I'm concerned about, or that I want to be transparent about, is this is for the kids, right? We have to look at it from, I know there's like the business side of things, but we got to make sure our kids are getting what we pay for in our taxes, and the highest standard possible, so that it prepares them for the world, regardless of whether they move on to college or they find a job or something. We just have to try to do what's best for the kids. And with that, it's about working together and not being negative and working in silos and pointing fingers at each other, because that's really not going to help get to our goal and get us out of this budget crisis.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today,
Thank you.
Kimberly. I know you're a busy woman with the kids.
No, don't worry about
family
it.
and work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.